What is up, guys? Swim here. We got some very, very exciting news coming in. This is patch previews. Some super cool things coming down the pipeline on this one. I'm really looking forward to this patch, unironically. I know if you've been watching me for the past, like, month, I've been a little kind of like gloomy, like, meta sucks, I played a little bit of Runeterra, but man, I am extremely excited for this update. I am very, very unironic. I think this is going to be good. I think it's going to make the game really, really great. Okay, not to set unrealistic expectations. Let's get into this. So, the big update is shipping soon, and we can't help but start talking about it. Piece of update, the beginning of the end of the beta. Makes sense, and let's just showcase some new stuff. So, right off the bat, Healer Alliance with Dazzle. So we can see here the Healer Alliance is Enchantress, Mr. Warlock, Dazzle, Omni Knight, and Necrophos. And Dazzle himself is a tier 2 unit with Troll Healer, and he's got Shadow Wave, his ability in Dota, which is sort of like a multi-target purification from Omni Knight. It actually does physical damage to the enemies for anyone who didn't play Dota. So basically, this is huge all at once. I think the most obvious thing about Dazzle to keep in mind is this is going to be a really, really, really good component in Knights. The reason for this basically can replace perhaps your Witch Doctor slot. We'll have to see exactly what slot you end up replacing. Maybe you can run 4 Trolls, depending on the situation. But Knights can fit Dazzle really, really well, because the Troll links with Batrider, or Witch Doctor if you cut Batrider. Of course, Knights are kind of always running Necrophos right now. They run Omni Knight, so you got your 3rd healer plus your 2nd Troll. Fits perfectly, like a glove. Now that I've said this, big asterisk for everything I'm going to say in this video. I mean, we have no idea if these heroes are losing some alliances. I saw some comments saying, like, maybe some of these heroes might lose an alliance, or maybe, like, some of the alliances will switch, or maybe, like, I mean, this is a really big update. Lots of things could change. So this video, I'm going to be kind of, like, doing some guesswork, trying to figure out, like, think about what things could be, but there's nothing solid here. Like, I'm going to be wrong about a lot of things. We have no idea what the patch is going to look like, but it's still fun to think about. Okay, so 4 Trolls could be a bit better these days. For those of you guys who didn't know Auto Chess back in the day, Auto Chess had the 4 Trolls we have in the game currently, and they sucked. And then they added Dazzle, and suddenly 4 Trolls were good. Because all you needed to do was drop your Shadow Shaman. Shadow Shaman and Batrider are 2 pretty weak units. Batrider can be an okay unit, of course, when you have Knights, but if you're not in Knights, it's kind of hard to run them. And Shadow Shaman is just really, really awkward and clunky to have. Now that Dazzle's here, maybe 4 Trolls can be a bit more of a thing. I don't know if I'm a big believer in the 4 Troll archetype quite yet. We'll have to see if it gets there, I'm not sure. But at the very least, going Knights with 2 Trolls is just better than ever right now. 4 Trolls could definitely get there. Okay, so Healer Alliance, a bit more about this before we move on. Because there's more. But the Healer Alliance looks pretty good for some early game stuff. Apart from using it in Troll Knights, what you can do is just have like these early game stompy healers. I mean, check it out, Dazzle's a tier 2, so you're going to get him early. I mean, we see Enchantress here. It's like you get a level 2 Mr. Warlock. You get Enchantress, level 2, give it Treant on top of that, because all friendly healers get amplified. And again, we don't know by how much. We have no idea how much. It'll probably be between 50 and 100%, would be my guess. It's for 3 units, hard to say. But, you get a Treant. Treant also has healing. Treant level 1 to go to level 2 with Enchantress Druid combo. Level 2 Mr. Warlock. Maybe like a level 2 Dazzle. That's a scary early game. Very, very, very scary early game board. So this is definitely like an early game smasher alliance. And also maybe sometime in the late game, you can end up linking up Healer with like Dazzle, Necrophos, Mr. Warlock, I guess, in some kind of like Warlock good stuffy sort of situation. Mr. Warlock is generally not that strong of a unit in the late game, so I kind of have my reservations there. But that could be very, very interesting. Anyway, I think that's basically covering it here for these healers. We don't know if like any of these units are losing other alliances, or if basically all of these other units are just, if they have 3 alliances now. We don't know how that's working out. They've been adding more and more alliances to other things. So, let's move on. Okay, insects. Very, very interesting stuff. Insects Alliance is also ready to bug your opponents with 3 new heroes, Weaver, Nyx, and Broodmother. Now, what I love about this is I think this suggestion originally came from Reddit, and this was effectively, I think they were called crawlers, and this is like almost exactly what the suggestion was. Well, I don't know about the alliance effect, but the actual units in question, which of course makes sense, just the fact that, you know, Weaver, Nyx, and Broodmother are the crawlers. And we can see here Sand got added in as well as a crawler. So you need 3 insects, and there's 4 of them in the game pool. So, now what insects do is when you have the 3 insects completed, spiderlings swarm enemies from the edge of the board. Enemies bitten by spiderlings have a chance to miss their attacks. Obviously, hard to say how strong that is. Really depends on, you know, what the chance is, how many spiderlings there are. They're just telling us like what the general concept of it is going to do, basically. So we're not sure. Also, I guess I should mention for healer, some people might pog out that perhaps something like Dawning of Bristol could see play now. I'm still not super hyped for that item, but maybe it's a bit better. I'm rambly and I jump around a lot. Sue me. Okay, sorry. I got sidetracked. Okay, sorry. Spiderlings. Alright, so we don't know how good these are, but I think it's cool. It's flavorful that they kind of swarm from the outside of the board. It gives you another dimension to the concept of positioning. So maybe you're a little bit better off if you're heads up against somebody running insects. You could maybe avoid the edges of the board a bit with your positioning. Maybe that ends up kind of like preventing the damage and mischance a little bit in that way. Who knows? But yeah, it's kind of like they're adding sort of summons again a little bit. Obviously, they've been removing a lot of summons. They removed Summoning Stone. And now maybe this is part of the reason why like insects can't really work with something like Summoning Stone, obviously. So they kind of needed to do that. Now let's take a look at the actual individual units. Okay, Weaver, tier 2 insect hunter with Shikuchi. Weaver shifts in and out of invisibility, becoming untargetable, moves to targets, dealing damage to enemy units as passing. So, super bizarre. When you think of Weaver, the Dota unit, and you're thinking, okay, let's put this into Underlords, you would give it almost any other ability, right? Give it, like, the Swarm, you give it maybe, like, even, like, Time Lapse or whatever its ulti is called. It's a little weird, or Gemini, right? But giving it Shikuchi, wow, that's a little strange. So, I guess what that means is it's basically just going to kind of be a damage poke that might allow it to get behind enemies. We don't know how this AI works. What I'm kind of expecting is it will often end up on the other side of enemies, which is kind of nice. Think of it sort of like Morphling's waveform, right? It takes some damage by being in front, and maybe, you know, once it does that, it kind of like shifts it Shikuchi's, which is kind of like waveform. It stops the opponents from attacking it because it goes invisible. And it does some damage, and I think its AI is probably coded in a similar way to waveform, where it like will go through enemies and kind of appear on the other side and keep attacking. So just like Morphling, this ability is a perfect tank ability, right? You put it up front, you get a level 2 so it won't die before it casts. You know, it takes some damage, casts Shikuchi, ends up behind them, and diaggros. And that's like a perfect tank concept. You know, obviously you're not absorbing a ton of damage, but what you're doing is you're providing like a good DPS frontline, if that makes any sense. And it's in Hunters, and Hunters kind of need a concept like that. Ever since Tidehunter moved out of Hunters, Hunters have been looking for more of like some frontline options. So Weaver could be some kind of like frontliner option for Hunters in exactly that way. So that could be a very cool opportunity. It's so hard to evaluate Insect as a concept because, of course, we have no idea exactly how strong this is going to be or how this is going to work. But yeah, Weaver will be, you know, a semi-frontliner in either Insects or Hunters, and Shikuchi looks generally solid. So, NYX Assassin, this is a tier 1 unit. Interesting. And this is an Insect Assassin. No surprises there. Spiked Carapace. NYX Assassin pops Spike out of its carapace, negating and reflecting damage dealt as well as stunning the source damage. So again, kind of a classic frontliner kind of ability. You obviously want this to get damaged quickly. It's sort of like Blade Mail. It's a little interesting. So how it works in Dota, or at least how it worked when I played Dota, because I haven't played Dota for a few years, it lasted 4 seconds, and anything that attacked it in that time got stunned, right? A pretty big deal, if you ask me. So there could be some degeneracy there. I mean, if it has anywhere near the same amount of numbers as Carapace has in Dota, that's really huge. Because what that means is if you just put Nyx on your front line and it uses Carapace, the entire enemy team does get stunned and damage reflected, which is kind of crazy, right? That's a little too strong. So they have to have reduced some amount of the damage reflect or the stun duration or something, right? Because otherwise that seems really, really nuts as like a frontliner for Assassins. Assassins already have a couple frontliners, those being like Morphling and Sand King. But I mean, hell, you can just throw in a NYX Assassin, why not? Vendetta. After teleporting, Nyx deals bonus damage on his next attack and applies break to the enemy, disabling all passive effects. So it's a rare ability to disable all passives, and that is cool. I love how this makes you want to position against Assassins. So Vendetta immediately raises the skill ceiling of playing Assassins, right? And you'll notice this in one specific way, which is that not only, I mean, you actually have to care about your positioning as Assassins, and I really like that. When you look at Assassins in the game right now, they're a little weird, right? Because they sort of seem like they should be sneaky and outmaneuvering and like kind of smart. You have to like outmaneuver your opponent and think cleverly. But when you actually play them, their positioning is usually a little brain dead, a little bit, because you usually position the same way for most situations. Obviously, when you end up with like 4 players left, or you know, heads up, maybe you'll do a couple like slightly sneaky things with your positioning, but you're not really pressured to that much. Vendetta, on the other hand, Vendetta's interesting. First of all, you have to choose between whether you're playing for Vendetta or Carapace, right? Because your Nyx is either going to be frontline or backline. Frontline is playing for Carapace, backline is playing for Vendetta, because it can't teleport unless it's, you know, deeper and back. Furthermore, you need to target this onto a specific unit. Break to disable passives is crazy, but it needs to actually hit a unit with a passive. So backliners with passives, you know, that could be something like Troll Warlord, could be something like Dragon Knight. There's a lot of passive effects you could disable to pretty great effects with this, but you're going to need to position your Nyx against the specific board, which it's kind of hard to do, you know, super early in the game. But when you're a little bit later, when you have a NYX Assassin, let's say you're in 6 Assassins, you've got a NYX Assassin, you want to basically be positioning it in the back, close to the same column that an opponent's kind of passive user DPS is, if that makes any sense. So Assassins, the way Assassins work is they're going to blink to the furthest unit in the back row, and they're going to blink to one that's in the closest column. So you want your Nyx to be basically directly across from whatever thing you want to be breaking. And that's cool. It makes you think about it in a different way. Now, you'll also note Nyx is an insect assassin, which means if Sand King is still an assassin, I saw there was a comment on Reddit that was saying, maybe Sand King's not an assassin anymore. And honestly, that's not a bad idea. It's hard to say, because, you know, they've been removing tags from certain things, so we kind of have no idea. We could see Sand King be an assassin. If Sand King is an assassin, Insect Assassin has huge crossover, right? Because if you're in Assassins, you only need to go for like one insect, right? At that point, and then you can easily just scoop for whichever one of these other 2 you want. You get insects for free, right? And kind of the same when you're in insects, you can go for all 3 insects, and then suddenly you have 2 out of 3 assassins. You just need 1 more assassin, right? And that works out pretty well. Okay, so let's check out finally Broodmother. Actually, before I go into Broodmother, you'll also notice one kind of interesting pattern, which is that Weaver is a hunter and NYX Assassin is an assassin. And there is one alliance that actually needs to complete both of these, which is elusive. So in theory, you could imagine some weird 6 elusive, 3 insect builds. Now, if anything, there could be some synergy with the idea of like insects just kind of like, you know, sort of attritioning the opponents down while your units are kind of evading. I don't necessarily hate the idea. That could actually be a build. Okay, Broodmother, the last unit. This is a tier 4 unit. This is an insect warlock. Wow. Spin web. Broodmother spins a web on top of an enemy unit. Enemies in the web lose attack speed, movement speed, and cast speed. So it doesn't buff spiders, it looks like, or at least it doesn't say it does, which is interesting. Okay, so presumably this is going to be a big web, right? In Dota, a web would be basically like almost as big as the screen. I'm sorry, that's the dog. Okay, it would be almost as big as the screen. So, you know, it might be, my guess would be like 5x5, 6x6, 7x7, maybe even something like that. You know, you see some big AoEs hitting something like that, but it's not doing damage, right? It's just losing attack speed, movement speed, and cast speed. So at the end of the day, the value of this basically will completely come down to, you know, how much of those numbers are. We have no idea how good this ability is going to be. It could also be smaller. There could be smaller webs, unlike in Dota. Dota's webs are bigger. And the reason for that being is Broodmother has the Warlock tag. Now, Warlocks obviously gain their lifelink every time they cast. Unless they change that too. I mean, they're changing everything, right? Keep in mind, all of this is pure speculation, so who knows? But basically, you know, Warlocks trigger lifelink every time they attack, or every time they cast their ability. So Spin Web was reworked to be a smaller web, like a 3x3 or something like that, but with a shorter cooldown, like 5-second cooldown. Maybe that's even better for her, right? Could be pretty interesting. It's very interesting seeing Broodmother exist as a Warlock, and of course additional Warlocks are no laughing matter. It's very interesting that Warlocks are now competing with Healer for that kind of Healer tag, and I don't think Warlocks are necessarily going to be OP in the future update. I think they're kind of like in a dangerous area right now, but you know, if they're competing with Healers for the ability to heal, and if Broodmother's not like, you know, super OP, I wouldn't be too concerned about them. I mean, you guys know I think Warlocks are very, very powerful in this game right now. Secondary only to 6 warriors, but yeah, so that's effectively it. So when you're in insects, how are you going to build insects, basically? That's the question. Like, which insect are you going to leave out? The answer is going to depend on whether Sand King is still an assassin or not, for sure. If Sand King is still an assassin, you go Nyx Sand King plus, you know, a flex, because Nyx and Sand King are going to be best buddies. If not, it's a little bit difficult to say. I mean, Sand King and Nyx, I think, will want to be in. And I think I would say, in general, I mean, based on this, if you want to be in 3 insects, Weaver would probably be the cut. Just as a random, we don't know how much, we don't even know how much stats these have, but just looking at their abilities and looking at their tiers, you know, Sand King and Nyx have stuns, so they scale well into the late game. Weaver has the Hunter tag, which you can use, and maybe it's even better, but it's kind of a little harder to utilize, whereas Broodmother, you know, Warlock is always useful. It's a tier 4, so it's probably going to have, you know, a better stat line. So 3 insects, if I had to guess, I would say Sand King, Nyx, and Broodmother. And I guess that actually doesn't end up depending on whether Sand King is an assassin or not. Okay, so that's basically it. That's kind of all we can talk about. But the last thing, and this I love, we'll continue our showcase of new heroes and alliances tomorrow with part 2. Whoa, look at this. So that's it. This was part 1 only. Got a lot of information here just all at once. I'm really excited. I'm really, really excited. You know what? I mean, you guys know if you watch me a lot, I'm most excited about like duos mode. I think that's going to be really great. Maybe they'll tell us a bit about how that works, but they said like even more like heroes and alliances. Yeah, new heroes and alliances tomorrow. So, I mean, this big update is living up to the name. I think this is going to be pretty gargantuan. I honestly can't wait. So that's going to be it for me for this just kind of, you know, last minute evaluation. We'll see how true some of this is. I'm sure we'll all, like, you know, after the patch, we'll look back at this video and laugh about how wrong I was about some of these things, because I'm stabbing in the dark here, like, big time. But it's still fun to, you know, look through these and think about what might be. You know, we'll see. Okay, guys, I'll see you, I guess, tomorrow for this part 2 of, you know, whatever heroes and alliances they have yet to show us. Peace, boys.